Techeles, when you have Techeles and not putting on the Techeles is a mitzvah sesei d'oraisa. Not putting it on when you have it is a bittul mitzvah sesei d'oraisa. And so the shaila is, why don't we have to? We might have it suffik. They bring rice. It should be a suffik d'oraisa l'chumra. So they bring down a svara, bring it down from the Pri Megadim. Vashavais brings it down from the Pri Megadim, others bring it down from Reb Chaim. That the only time you say suffik d'oraisa l'chumra is only if after you're mekayim it again, mal suffik, you're vaday going to have been yoytze. A person's not sure if you shook lulav on the first day. So it's a suffik d'oraisa, you have to shake it again to make sure you're yoytze. But one thing you know, when you shake it the second time, you're for sure yoytze. You're not sure if you bench. If you bench, now you know that you're yaitze benching. But if even after you do the mitzvah a second time or do the mitzvah misafik, you're still going to have the suffix, and you're not going to be vada yaitze your suffix, so then there's no din of suffix d'oraisa l'chumra. And so the mail over here, a yaitze that even after you wear the Techeles, you still don't know if you were yaitze in the mitzvah of Techeles. As far as the suffix, it's not like your father going to be yaitze. So they say a svara that over there's no suffix d'oraisa l'chumra. The Rabbi Menachem Zemba, one of the Polish gedolim in William the Floy, Mamshe Goyim, he was killed by the Nazis in Machshimam. So he had a son who was a chosin, who was nifter when he was a chosin. And as a zeicher for his son, he put out letters that he went back and forth with his son, and he printed the sefer. He printed the letters. And in one of the letters, his son, who was a tremendous Talmud Chacham, writes in this svara that suffik d'oraisa l'chumra is only if you're going to be yaitze. And Reb Nachman Zembe was a super genius, Ilui, Yofik Koyachav Mikoyach Ben. He writes him back, he says, yes, I heard that svara, it goes into the yeshiva shevelt, the Toil my yeshivas. He says, he even is mitzayin in the Shulchan Aruch HaRav that he mentions such a svara like this. But he's disagreed with it, and he goes chapter and verse, and he brings one rai after another rai from Shulchan Aruch and Paiskim that you don't go with such a svara like that. So the shaila now is, if you don't fear zach like that, Taka, so why Taka misafik don't we put it? Well, don't we wear it? So the Chazon Ish writes, they bring down a Maaseh Ish, that they asked the Chazon Ish when it came to the Radziner Techeles, and they wanted to know, why don't you put it on? It's a suffix. And he says, V'im yesh suffix b'dover ha'im tzorich machma suffix lahatil tzeva zebetzitzis. V'heshiv Rabbeinu, the Chazon Ish answered, afilu suffix ein kan. Not even a suffix. Sharei kol chachmei hador bismanenu, bismanu shal hagoyim. All the gedolim in the time of the Radziner cholku olav. We have a halacha. Yochid v'rabim halacha kirabim. Rubam kekulam cholku olav. And he lists off those who are chaylik on him. He says that there was even a sefer. He says the Radziner wrote a sefer that was called Svunei Tunei Chayil, and Rabbi Tzal HaKoyin wrote against the Svunei Tunei Chayil. He wrote a sefer Vayachis HaMitzri Vayitmeneu B'Chayil. Connected this sefer. He says when you have a roiv in stock, there's no suffix d'oraisa. We pass him with roiv. That's the way the Torah works. And that's the koyach hapsak, and that's the way we fear zach. Later on, he says again, "Ve'ilu hayotzel tziloi shel safik." He says if there was just a shadow of a doubt by the gedolim at the time of the Radziner Haroi, how you have gedolim mekabel moisai. He says you think they wouldn't have wanted to put on the Techeles. He says it would have been nothing more than that. The halacha is Yom Halacha Garabim, and that's the way we fear zach. It's also tshuva from Rabbi Shavais, and he says L'gabi the Techeles of today. He says not a suffix either. He says it doesn't go into the Hagdara B'chlal of a suffix to make it into a suffix d'oraisa. So mitzad suffix d'oraisa l'chumra, they seem to say that it's b'chal not an Indian. The only shaila is that they asked the Chazon Ish, Im lo yoyel lo yazik, what do you have to lose? Okay, so it's not a suffix that you're mechuyev to go and spend money, but you have the Techeles, you have it, why not put it on? You might be mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa. So on that, Reb Chaim Kanievsky also in Ma'aseh, she brings down Shamati, that when somebody asked him, Im lo yoyel lo yazik, he said, and I think I mentioned this once, that in the city of Kosovo, when he was growing up, the Chazon Ish says, there was a Yid who walked around with frames without the lenses in it. They asked him, you don't need glasses? He goes, no. He says, so why are you wearing the lenses? He says, Im lo yoyel lo yazik. He says, and no one knows what they thought about that person. He says, in Yiddishkeit, we don't do those things. Im lo yoyel lo yazik. If there's halacha, if there's a suffix, it's one thing. If there's no shemitz of a suffix b'chlal, there's no such thing as why not just do it. In the late 1700s, somebody, very, very controversial, but somebody found ksavim from the Rosh, shuvas from the Rosh. And he put them out, 392 shuvas, and he named it B'Samim Rosh. B'Samim is the gematria of 392. At the time, a lot of the shuvas were very, very modne, very controversial, and a lot of the G'daylim felt that it was mezuyif, put out by somebody who wasn't an erlicher, and he had maybe an agenda, and therefore they weren't accepted. This Tshuva Sefer, basically, the Chasam Sefer referred to it not as the Kisvei HaRosh, but as the Kizvei HaRosh, the lies of the Rosh. But although the Chasam Sefer referred to it as the Kizvei HaRosh, but that it seems he felt is only by certain Tshuvas, which they were mevar, or that at least appeared to him as ksavim, as forgeries, mezuyif. But the Chasam Sefer himself, in Tshuvas, some Tshuvas brings down svaras and rayas to his psakim from the Sefer B'Samim Rosh. In Tshuva Reish Mem Daled, a shayil asks him a very interesting shayil. He says to the Rosh, he says, "Found the chilazon. I found it. It has snapir, it has kaskeses." He says that the exact color, everything fits in beautiful. He says, so I think we should start wearing the Techeles. Number 2, he says to him, he says, I'm curious to know if the halacha of Techeles you have to put on your beged, is it a specific creature, is it a dag, or it means anything that produces the color of Techeles? And Grada Chazal used that one, but if you could produce the same color with a different thing, maybe even a plant, so maybe it should be good. And third of all, he says that even if you're going to tell me that this is not the Techeles, and the Techeles has to come from a specific fish, he says, maybe we should wear this anyways because it's a zeicher. A zeicher, we don't have the mitzvah. He says, we didn't have it since the Amoraim's time, he writes. He says, so maybe we should wear it as a zeicher for the mitzvah of Techeles. So the Rosh answers the 3 questions, and he says to him, as far as you want to know if this is the Tchilazim, he goes, it's vadli not the Tchilazim. And he says to him something obviously that the Shoyal mentioned to him, the way you extract the dam, he says it's obviously not the Techeles the way you're describing it. He says, you want to know if you need a tseva or not, if it's the color or if it's the dam. He says, we have a Messiah and you have to have a Messiah, and it's exactly the tseva, it's exactly a certain fish. And he says, as a matter of fact, it's a very big chiddush, but the Rosh says that even if it wouldn't be that you need a specific fish, he says you need a very, very precise color. It's not an array of colors that you could be, because you need a very specific color, to the point that even says that kol ilon is no good because it's a mashu off in the color. That's the yisar. Even though Chazal say you can't be mafkin, he says it's something with the color, and you have to have the exact color, and that color, you have to have Messiah to know which fish that came from, and that's the only way to produce it. And then he says to him, if you want to know, you should wear it as a zeicher anyways. Why not? He says to him, we don't do that. Ein like, he says, Vasher amarta shenikochenu lezeicher, ein oisin came. Pen yoyru lemochor b'neinu, shezeu atcheles ha'omer b'toyra. Mikol she'ein oisi admin, ein like oisi lezeicher. If somebody doesn't have an esrog, you can't take a pomegranate instead, just in order to make a zeicher. So the Rosh, if this shuv is a Rosh, he comes out clearly that if you're not 100% absolute to have a Messiah on it, don't put it on as a zeicher. Don't put it on. Over here, it's very, very, very little percent according to any form of model, any paisik, any doilea paiskim. There's bichlal no reason to put it on. There's no chiyuv to put it on. As far as what could be wrong, lemaisa, we put it on besides, it's just some emroish. There's a ben yada in Bab Metzia and the sugi over there of Kol Ilon Samachalif, and he says, what's Pshat Chazal are so strong, and he says, Atoyle Kol Ilon B'Vigdoi, if somebody puts on the phony Techeles, and he says this is Techeles, so the Gemara says that he's Osir HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lipara Mimenu, the Banish Loilam is going to pay him, he's going to punish him. What's so chum? You don't find that Chazal say that if somebody puts up a mezuzah and he puts a hollow mezuzah case, or his tefillin, he doesn't put in the parachutes, you don't find that Chazal say that also that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lipara. And he says a very interesting thing, because Ainli ben Astaris, these things are beyond me, but Rav Shlomo Miller brought this down, and he says that Ben the Yodis brings down from a Zoyar that the color blue, there's tfisa l'sitra acher. The dark side, I don't understand these things, but blue has it. And he created the Techeles, the mitzvah of Techeles, to counter that. And he says, if you're not certain that this is the Techeles, if there's a very little chance that there's a Techeles, that's a Techeles, then you're sort of messing around with something with the Staris. Now, do we do that? I don't know if anybody doesn't wear blue shirts or anything because of this. But the Ben Yoda says that it's a bazunder, a chaymer of putting on techeles, putting on blue strings, which is not real. Rabbi Yashiv has this tshuva, again, he's very strong against it. He has another taina, he has a taina of konaf min konaf. The Gemara says, the Ramah brings down the halacha, not ma'akiv, he says, but if a person has the strings of his tzitzis in a color, he should have the beged the same color. So if the techeles are orange, if the strings are orange, he should have an orange beged. So Mele, over here, if you can have the exception is the techeles. If you have authentic techeles, then there's an exception. You don't have to have the konaf bin konaf. But on the tzad that it's not the techeles, then you're not going to be yotze the mitzvah of a konaf bin konaf unless you patak stripe your talis with a blue stripe on it. Then you're not going to have a konaf min konaf. Now others argue on that. The Rabbi Yashiv himself paskins that that's only on the strings that are the lavan strings, but on the techeles strings, even if you don't put on the real techeles and you color them any color, there's no din of a konaf bin konaf. Upon him, Rabbi Yashiv in Shuvah says that this is a problem, and so therefore it's something that you have a little bit what to lose. Told you, I think I mentioned this mice already. That Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, somebody, a Talmud of his, Rav Daniel Osher Kleinman, he heard about 10 years ago, maybe more, he heard that he was in Eretz Yisrael at the time, and he heard that Rav Shmuel, he heard from a very, very reliable source that Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky started wearing the Techeles. And so he ran down to the chasana that Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky was there in Eretz Yisrael for. He said he's very close with him, very open with him, and he went over to him and he said to him, is it true that the Rebbe started putting on Techeles? It was mamish a pella by him. Now he knew Rav Shmuel. Chas v'shalom. He says, Kulei hi. He goes, yeah. He says, okay. And he turns around. He goes, not true. It's not true. So Shmuel grabs him and he says to him, can you sit in front of the head table? And he says to him, come, I want to show you something. And he picks up his frock. He wears his tzitzis tucked in. And he takes out his tzitzis, picks up his shirt, and he says to him, shows him the tzitzis. He says, does this look like Techeles? And then he says, okay, I hear. And he's ready to leave. And Shmuel Kamenetsky says, no, come back. He picks up his shirt right and he says, do you see another beged underneath besides the tzitzis I showed you? And my undershirt. He says, no. He says, my eye. He says, I don't want somebody to say, he showed you one pair of tzitzis, he didn't show you the other pair. He was wearing a pitzina. Ad kedei kach. He said, Kulei. He said, yeah. He goes, you look at the Aruch HaShulchan, I think we mentioned once also, the Aruch HaShulchan says, referring to the Radziner's Techeles, And he says at the end over there, he says that all the Gedolim were chaylik on him. The ain't shemei aloi mikol Gedolei Yisrael. No one listened to him. And he says, Mirz Hashem, when Mashiach comes and the Gula will come, Mashiach will bring along with it. He'll bring along the Techeles. He'll bring along the Chilazim. And then we'll look back at all the hundreds and maybe tens and tens of rayas and kashas, and everything will be Messiah that will fit in. Mirz Hashem, we should have this. Somebody showed me yesterday that the Chidah wrote